Okay, hi, I'm Dr. David Lamson, a chiropractor in Durango with Rise Wellness. And I'm here to interview an amazing person who is actually in Mexico right now. Her name is Alexandra Friedman, and I've known her for many years. And she's gone from having so much passion about communication, about health and fitness and wellness. And also, she's recently gone from having worked at Amazon to now she's got a passion project called ConnectionFeast, and it's all about creating connection around these dinners where you create a conversation around different topics. And so Alexander has been really awesome at kind of starting the dialogue and bringing people together in one of the most kind of challenging times for bringing people together with COVID and the pandemic that's happening. And so I wanted to talk to her about what things she's found in terms of creating connections, maybe what things are people needing in this time. And so without further ado, I want to introduce Alex Friedman, who's in Mexico right now, streaming to us live. So welcome, Alex.
Thank you. I appreciate being here and to talk about this. And I will preface this by saying, yeah, I am in Mexico right now, some spotty connection. So if I freeze, it's because I'm playing a game. But no, I will say actually Connection Feast is, you mentioned it was a passion project. And what's interesting about this is it's actually, in addition to being something I'm super passionate about, it's like a calling. It's like I felt this desire in me for a very long time to feel more connected myself, but I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't really know what I maybe felt like called to do, so to speak. And when I kind of started to shift into that and figure out what was I missing, how could I fuel that fire for myself, I realized, oh, there's like a lot of life in me that's just not fully feeling connected to people in a deeper way. This is not only a calling, but it is like something of a fire that I need to light, and then I need to spread in a good way and help other people feel not so alone, and feel like more connected to who they are, so they can better identify where they see themselves and then better connect with other people. And it's become like, yeah, a true calling that has happened so naturally. And I've been doing it for a couple of years. And it just so happened to be obviously during the pandemic, when we need something even more like this to help fuel the fire of people feeling like, wow, I didn't know that I was feeling maybe lonely or disconnected all these years. And now this just puts a spotlight on it. And, of what might have been this little feeling inside themselves for a long time. And I think that's why it's growing so much, is people are looking for deeper connection and don't know how to get it, don't know what that means, don't know where to start. And so Connection Feast gives them an access point to learning about that.
Awesome. I love that you made the distinction between passion project and calling. It seems like calling is like a much deeper thing, of like a soul mission almost, that and how cool that you found that, because so many people are searching for that soul mission, searching for that calling, and maybe haven't found it. So what are some of the things that you found in the conversations in the Connection Feast that you've had recently, starting in April over the summer, that maybe are the questions that people have or the needs that people have different, or are they just more exaggerated, or how have things changed over this this kind of intensity of this summer?
Yeah. Okay. So the feast started out in person, right? And they were a dinner party, an actual feast. But you can feast on connection in a lot of ways. You can feast on connection through food, or through hiking, or through playing. When the pandemic hit, or like the lockdown hit and February happened, we had to close down the feast, like sold out feasts. And I had to quickly transition. How am I going to be able to move this into a virtual setting and still create the experience that people were craving? The whole mission initially was in person. People were hiding before the pandemic behind their screens. They were hiding then, and they needed a way to meet in person. And so when that hit, I started to see an immediate calling to it. People wanted to unify, right? Because they were like, what is going on? And people instantly took to it and just kind of like wanted to talk about the shock of the pandemic. But as we've continuously done this, and this has been key, the continuously done it, it is a feast every other week. Because I think what people are really missing is consistency. And I think what people are really missing is a dependable friend, something that they can count on, something that they know that they can go do and feel comfortable doing. And so it's been really important to me to give people that access point, that no matter what, I will always have a feast, and it will always be accessible for people, even as we grow into other things. And so I think what I really saw is people like excited to have like almost like a friend that they could depend on, right? Even if everybody's totally new at the feast and they've never met them. I see people coming to these feasts between the ages of around 35 to 50 is about average. Most of them are single. And if they're not single, they went through some sort of like life transformation, probably before the pandemic, that has caused them to want to search deeper. And this is like a goal for themselves to surround themselves around people that search deeper. So the pandemic is like pushing people who are alone, maybe living alone, to seek out friendships in a new way so that they can feel like they are growing, so they can feel like they have some friendships that are evolving in their life, even if they're not doing that in person. And what I see happening now is like people are just more open to it. They didn't know that they could do this. They were uncomfortable to do it in person, right? I'd say about 70% of these people are introverts. I am not. David knows this. I am exact opposite. I had no idea that this was going to be the case. I had no education of how to help introverts feel welcome, how they might respond in a big group versus one-on-one. And so I think also what I learned is that introverts are hungry for this connection, really hungry for this connection, because they also a lot of them weren't getting it before, and might have been uncomfortable putting themselves in environments that would push them to make those friendships. This is a slightly more accessible outlet for them, and they're looking for the guidance and the facilitation. That's the key. If it was just like an unfacilitated room, it would feel uncomfortable. So people are kind of looking for the hand-holding, looking for the consistency, and looking for something they can depend on. And I don't think that we saw that as much before, because there were so many choices that it might have felt a little overwhelming. I think now what I'm seeing is people are like, yeah, please just kind of guide me, show me a little bit more, because I don't know what to do anymore, right? I'm lonely, I need to connect. I'm going to put myself here. Can you help me? That's what I'm seeing. People are okay with being helped. So those are a couple lessons I've really learned. What's so interesting is, like, to be honest with you, when I had my first feast, very first feast, by the way, I'm not a great cook. I put it all together, and I was scared to facilitate the conversation. I was so scared and nervous that I didn't facilitate the first conversation. I just like told people the theme, and then like didn't put structure around it. And I quickly learned the structure was so key. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been really helpful. People just like having a little structure, like creativity within boundaries, so to speak.
That's so important. And, you know, what I notice is that structure is important with any kind of meeting. You know, I mean, I do a lot of outdoor stuff, and what I'm finding is, like, you know, just having kind of parameters, like, of when you are meeting a group to go in the backcountry, let's say, it's like a structure to, like, okay, powwow, we discuss a plan, and then we go do the plan, and then we kind of powwow at the end. Just even having that kind of structure, you know, or even like a dinner party, it's like having that structure just creates such greater depth. And yeah, you're right. A lot of people, I think a lot of us are uncomfortable with creating that structure, creating that leadership, but when it happens, it's so much more powerful in my view. That's amazing that you said 90% of people were introverts. That's incredible to me, that statistic. What do you think, it sounded, you kind of told a little bit about like how you learned about the structure and like the guidance and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of misnomers about what introvertedness means. You know, like a lot of people have misconceptions about that. What else did you learn about kind of the different types of interacting, whether it's introvert or extrovert or whatever?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So I have a lot of friends or a lot of acquaintances, and I would have never known that some of these people were introverts because one-on-one, they are not to me. They're very in-depth, they're very present, they're very energetic. But when I would see them in a group and barely talking, I just notice it. And being a extremely empathic person, I can smell it from a mile away. I started, and I don't know the exact terminology necessarily. There's lots of books and experts on that, and I think for sure people can have a combination of both, or you know, a combination of lots of different kind of ways of being at certain times in different parts of themselves. But what I have noticed from an introversion standpoint is that they don't like not having something to do necessarily in a big group. They prefer deep conversations over kind of small talk. That's like the most painful thing for them. So in a in-person scenario, the way I solved this was I gave people tasks. So I would be like, David and Sam, you might have, David and Sam and David, you are the table masters. I need you to figure out how to set up these tables to seat 22 people. Any design you want, everybody has to see each other, go. Introverts like the idea of kind of having a task to do versus standing around and introducing themselves to people. This was really helpful for me because A, they set up the tables, but B, it gave me a way to help them warm up, so to speak. In a virtual situation, getting an introvert into a virtual experience is a whole nother ordeal. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it takes like me talking to them directly, like through the content, you know, telling a person, if you're this type of person, you're feeling like this, so that they feel really welcome. So learning from my in-person experiences, I also learned when they come in, what am I going to do to help them feel comfortable right away? Everybody knows, like when you go into a Zoom meeting and it's like this awkward, like people popping in, you're like looking at everybody. So we do a lot of polls to keep people busy. Mm-hmm. And music, and I'm sometimes have a question I'm asking people, and there's prompts. The introverts themselves like to kind of know what's going to be happening. They like to know how many people will be in the room. If they go into a breakout room, what should they do? Versus I would go into a breakout room and I'd be like, what's your name? You know, a lot of introverts won't necessarily do that. So I really had to set up a structure specifically giving them enough guidance that they had something to do with kind of with their hands, so to speak, and their eyes and their minds, so they didn't start kind of feeling uncomfortable. I forget what the theory is called, but there's this like theory that people think that people are always looking at them, right? When the truth is, people are more worried about themselves than other people. It's like the in a yoga room and we think everyone's looking at us. And if you're really hot and you look amazing in spandex, maybe a couple people are. But truth of the matter, people are probably more concerned about themselves. And that's what I've noticed. I'm just going to create a structure and environment that keeps people busy and that they know what to expect, but it still has enough excitement that they don't quite know what the conversation will be like. They know the theme, so they feel prepared, right? If the theme interests them. And if they've been to a feast before, they know the structure. And if they don't, I give them just enough to know we will guide you through, but you'll also have a chance to meet new people. So extroverts, on the other hand, you could put us in a room with just a theme and we would find a way to connect with other people. And so that's what I've really noticed. The structure is key to help the introverts feel included. Now, I will say what I have noticed about the pandemic is a lot of people are coming who, some of them literally say they don't have any friends. They don't, maybe they also have something going on for them physically, that they barely even leave the house as it is. And they don't go deep with anybody because they don't feel uncomfortable to like reach out. They don't know how. So I hosted a feast about how to make friends. Literally, that was the theme. I think I had 48 registrations, which was the most I've ever had, in the sense that I barely promoted. And people were begging, hopefully you can hear me, people were begging, please, can you just list out how I can make friends, please, like listing it out. And I was like, sure, like listing it out. Like, I don't think people realize that a majority of people, especially as we get older, don't have deep friendships at all. And even if they do have friendships, they're more like what I, would associate with an acquaintance. They just don't have access to it. They lack self-value. They lack the skills, the resources to do it. And I have noticed that a lot more of them are coming to feasts. And what I'm hoping they realize is that they, through these kind of conversations, the stories that they tell themselves about being boring or feeling like not enough is not necessarily true. And they have things to add to conversations and they have value. And we give them that confidence enough and then access to people through the community that they can call friends. And so that's really been interesting to me and a great opportunity for me to learn how can I support people who are in that scenario.
I mean, like, it just shows you how, a simple thing like having a dinner or having a conversation, it's such a simple thing, but on a big scale, it has the potential to transform the world. I mean, so many people today are so lonely. I mean, I think everyone can identify with being lonely, being, having a need for more connection. So I think what you're doing is so important and valuable. And, it's just, fascinating to hear, how, just like a simple thing of like making friends. I mean, what a great skill that anyone can learn from. And I was just thinking about, myself, I feel like in many ways a big extrovert. I don't have an issue, like I can interact with pretty much anyone, but there's certain areas where I do feel introverted. Like if I go into a bar alone or if I go to certain places alone, there's certain instances where I feel very shy and I feel intimidated to ask and so I can imagine people that are even more shy, how difficult that would be. And I think that what a great skill that we can all learn from. What were some of the things that were kind of the top takeaways from making friends? I'm curious to know.
Yeah, one of my favorite feasts, one of my favorite topics. Learned a lot myself because here's what differentiates Connection Feast. First of all, I'm going to point out the dinners don't happen during the virtual feasts. I tried this. Telling people like what to eat. Sometimes I would like force myself to eat like Ann host, and it's very hard. And then I noticed people would write in the survey that they were self-conscious about eating on camera. So I took the food part away from that part. And hopefully, can you hear me, Dave? Mm-hmm. Okay. So here's what that's interesting about Connection Feast. Every feast I spend, and I have facilitators, by the way, we spend significant amount of time doing research about the topic and making poll questions. They're not just like, how many friends do you have? These are introspective poll questions, which actually with the goal of like going through a journey of, there's kind of a formula, maybe helping people see things from like an outsider's perspective and then going back in and then giving them something actionable to do after the feast. But the polls help us get a better idea of where people are, where their struggles are. They're all anonymous. Even when I look at the reports, I can't see who said what. So what I learned about the polls from the friendship feast, which was only maybe 3 weeks ago, or no, actually maybe like a month ago. So most people only have from the feast, not only, but have a handful of friends, literally a handful. So we're looking at 5, right? 5 friends. Now I will repeat, people are between the ages of 35 and 40, 35 and 50. So think about that. And so that's interesting. A lot of them also have said in the feast that the majority of the friends that they made or new friends that they've made were through mutual friends. Okay. Now that might not be so surprising And that is a great way to meet people, unless those people aren't serving you in the sense of improving your life. Maybe they're not a good influence on you. And if you are, quote unquote, the 5 people you surround yourself with, I think what people at the feast and a lot of people in general don't realize is you have a choice of who those people are. Just because they are mutual friends and just because somebody reaches out to you does not mean you have to be friends with them. In fact, you should be very specific and very particular about who those people are in your life. And I think that was a huge takeaway for people at the feast and for me to learn, is that so many people are not aware of this. This is a very hard skill to learn, because you have to do it. And that was the next part. The number one way and the number one takeaway that people came away from this feast was, if you want friends in your life, it takes 2 main things. You have to initiate. You have to reach out to people. You really do. You cannot just go to have the people friends of friends. You must initiate, and that is so hard. And the second part was time. Friendships take time, and they take experiences. So you have to be part of things that are consistent or create the consistency, and you need to create experiences and memories together. It's just how people earn trust. So that takes time. And I think people going away realizing, okay, it's not, I have a choice here. This isn't happening to me, it's happening for me. And now I can choose how I want to move forward. So then we ask people to make, what are 3 things you can do in the next 3 weeks that can help you find more people that are in alignment with kind of the friendships that you want. So those were some big takeaways. People didn't realize that they could have a choice of who was in their life, and they also didn't know how. So we gave them some tools through their own thinking of how they could do that. And I also will reinforce to whoever's listening, whatever that weird thing is about you, whatever those quirky parts about you, like those are gold. Mm-hmm. You want, the riches are in the niches. So find those like small groups of people that have that really interesting, weird kind of thing about you that maybe you used to be self-conscious of, but now you own. And if you're not owning it yet, now's the time, because other people are like that too. And so those were some key takeaways from the feast, and have left a lasting impression on me, so much so that I have considered more feasts on this topic, but also workshops and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that would be, well, first off, thank you for summarizing that so well and eloquently. I think that those types of workshops would be so powerful. I think I heard an interview of another guy who, he had a lot of death in his life, and he realized that like no one knows how to deal with death, and so he that's what he started doing. He started having these dinners around death, and people would talk, and then you got to have a conversation around that. What's cool about what you're doing is really, you're so flexible in terms of you can really tackle any topic and go deep, into it, and be flexible around what's going on in that moment, which is really powerful. I just was thinking about all the times where I've met someone and maybe we've exchanged numbers or become friends on social media or whatever, but then how life becomes busy and it's like, oh, well, I want to call them or I want to hang out, but it's like my life is just too busy. And it does take effort. It does take, okay, even though I'm busy, I still am going to reach out. I'm still going to reach out. And it is effort. It's not easy, but it definitely makes a difference. Actually today, I went skinning this morning, and early in the morning, and I met another guy who was a backcountry skier, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna like make a friend. So I got his number and we connected, but it was interesting how that skill of making friends is so important. And there was some awkwardness of like asking for another guy's number, but I was like, who I just literally met, and I just saw that he was a skier and he was a skilled skier and he was a skilled backcountry skier. And I was like, oh, I need more friends that are backcountry skiers. And we have a mutual love. And so it was like once I got over that awkwardness, it was like no big deal. And he was really stoked to meet another backcountry skier, and it was great. But it does take effort, like you said. I want to ask about like how you set up this, because it sounds like, I mean, doing the Connection Feast online, it sounds like there's some technical things about like doing the polls. And I don't know if, was Zoom a robust enough platform, or did you have to create your own, or how did you go about kind of the technical aspects of like creating this platform?
Yes. As you know, I'm experiencing now some technical difficulties, right? So like I had to really kind of do my best to think that through. I'm kind of like the type of person that I will try to find like something unique that I can do differently within something that everybody else is using, maybe not to their advantage. Zoom still is one of the best platforms in regard to seeing people's faces. It's not the only one out there. When I first started, I tried actually doing the exact same format that I did in person. It worked, but it wasn't it. So I started playing around and I realized nobody's really utilizing polls. And so I implemented that. From a technology standpoint, I was like, this not only became a really great tool because nobody's doing it like this, like we based the whole feast around the polls. And then we look at the answers and discuss them, and it helps people feel like they have a resource, that it's not like they just have to say, I feel sad. They can, well, I picked blah because, and it gives them kind of an access point. From a technology standpoint, it made complete sense. It was free to download. It was for your phone or for your computer. And at the very least possible kind of access point, you could call in, which is not ideal, but it's still accessible. So it felt like a good access point for me. I do pay for the premium model, which allowed for some things that I wasn't able to access at the free one. In addition, I feel like I want to be able to provide people this access point. Now, I will say there's some elements that don't work with Zoom, and I'm very aware of that. An example would be somebody does call in. I don't like their phone number showing. I think that that's invasive to the potential of their privacy, but also everybody else has their face. We actually have like connection code rules basically. And I might implement the rule that if you do call in, you at least need to allow me to rename you. I'll make up your name, but like if you want me to. But there's got to be some things for helping people feel comfortable. This is super vulnerable stuff people talk about. The next part of a challenge from a technology standpoint, for sure, has been like, how do keep people connected after a feast? The whole point of a feast is to create friendships outside of a feast. So like to help people dive deeper and then help them connect afterwards. Now, I've been apprehensive or also like holding back on creating another social community for people to go to that I'm not sure that they'll use or not,
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully you can, okay, I'm seeing I was like, did Dave Price? So I realized that's an issue, and I'm digging through that right now. At this point, we have a Facebook group, which not every feaster's on. We're active on Instagram, which not every feaster is on. The next access point will be creating probably a sub community, a Slack community, something like that. But there's lots of technology out there. It's just a matter of, do people use it? Will people use it? And because I'm in the startup community, I am very much a proponent for like, I guess like throw it on the wall and see how it goes, test it before I build it, so to speak. And so I will be testing other ways. And I think that people just are looking for a place to go so that they can reach out. So you met this person skinning up this morning, and you were both in the same place at the same time. So these people are in a breakout room together, which is like you skinning up the mountain, and then you got this person's phone number. Now, my ideal scenario would be after a feast, I could connect everyone and be like, Dave and Alex, you were in a room together. Here, reply to each other if you want to exchange emails. I think something like that to give people direct access would be great. But I have noticed that people like to talk about the subject afterward. They like to share resources. They like to share findings, how they're feeling. So I'm still digging for that exact exact access point, and there are community platforms. It's just, will people use that? It's just another social thing for people to do. So it is a challenge of mine that I'm in the middle of trying to figure out. And you just have that problem of like Zoom fatigue, and people are exhausted, right? People are hungry.
And that Zoom, like it's hard to keep a chat going on a Zoom thing, which would be really valuable.
There's this cool platform that we use where basically we have after parties sometimes, and it takes people into this like virtual like game where you're a character, and you can be all sorts of characters. Like last time I was a person in a wheelchair, and I like put my name, and you can pick your hair color, your skin color, and you can pick the background. So I think we were in like a really like a trashy kind of bar. There was like an arcade in the back and this and that, and you can just go around to different groups like you would in person. And what's so cool is that as I get closer to that group, the sound of that group gets louder. But as I rolled away in my wheelchair, and to another group, I could hear their conversation, which is kind of mind blowing, right? To even think that that's a virtual experience. So I was like walking into people's conversations back and forth. That's beautiful. And I did get a lot of requests from people to have that be something that's like happens every time. In addition, like I would be interested in hosting a feast like that. The problem is, after hosting an 1.5-hour feast and prepping for many, many hours, as a facilitator, I'm exhausted and I am not able to necessarily do it. But I'll provide you with that link afterwards because the name is slipping my mind, but it is an incredible product. And things like where they feel like they're in person is really a helpful tool.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like it has so much potential for, helping people, enter into different dialogues and, practice entering in, making friends, things like that. That's cool. And so it sounds like you had to make a big shift from, the in-person to the online. How has the engagement been? Because obviously if it's online, you can reach a much bigger audience. Do you find that you've been able to take that engagement and increase that being online and not being tied down to like a physical meeting place where people, a lot of people are not in that city or not available at that time,
Yeah. We have people from all over the world join the feasts. I mean, we had a person from China join in. And he barely spoke any English, by the way. He was mostly there to like practice English. I'm not sure if the name of the feast confused him, because I say a lot about meaningful conversation. And so I thought, but that was an outlier. But we have people, someone from Malaysia came. We have people from Germany. We have people from Israel. How they're finding it is a little bit of a question mark. I do post it in a lot of places. And I just think that, yeah, we get access to people from all over the world now, which we obviously didn't in person. My plan was always, though, to launch this city by city, and I still plan to do so. In fact, we think from the event industry standpoint that we'll see like a renaissance of in-person, sort of like the Roaring 20s, and people will just be hungry. Mm-hmm. So right now, my biggest goal is how can I get as many people as possible into a feast, because I want to build the community. I want those email addresses in a very beautiful way so that when we launch these in person, they will have first access. We will launch these in person and they can finally like celebrate together. Having the voices from all over the world has been a beautiful, beautiful gift, of course, depending on the topic as well. And so I will be launching, there's somebody from Israel who's like, I don't know how to say this, like she thinks it's kismet to find me doing this, and she really wants to partner. The way that I've recommended is, why don't you help me launch an international, meaning you stay up to, like I can't do a whole bunch of different times. So if I have partners in different parts of the world, we can grow it even more. I think the conversations obviously around the same topic. What is it like to make friends? If you live in Europe, which we know is a totally different culture in regard to friendships and community, much different. And then how does that look in Middle East or Mideast? And also, I think they're also very curious about all the race and racism and stuff that we experience. And of course, during the election, we have a lot of Canadians that come, which I love. And they probably know just about as much about our politics that we do. And so it really does help give a diversity of conversation and views. People come away saying it all the time, like, I had never thought about that. And I'll be honest, Dave, that's like wasn't my intention. I kind of did this just to help people dig deeper. I never in my mind thought that maybe it would also help people see different perspectives in the sense of from different parts of the world necessarily, because I just didn't think it would get there like initially, because I wasn't anticipating a pandemic so that we would have virtual. When we, I won't say when things return to normal, because I don't think there ever will be a similar thing. I think when things shift back and we're allowed and legally allowed to do things more in person as a business entity, then I think that we will always do virtual as well. There's no way I will lose that. I think that it will be essential. So the transition has actually been a really beautiful thing. I think the harder thing for me is like to make it a financially stable business for myself so that I can continue to grow it. There's a lot of people who don't or can't pay for such a thing. So I'm trying to figure out how can I have a business model that supports this, as well as something that's sustainable enough that I can continue to grow it. So that's the avenue I'm exploring right now of how to make that happen without potentially getting funding, because once you get funding, it adds another layer of stress, and also I will lose some ownership in regard to the direction I see it going. So to answer your question, it's grown significantly and in a beautiful way, and connected people from all over the world in a way that I never imagined. And it feels like such an honor to be able to host a space like that.
That's great. I love it. I mean, especially when, I mean, if you just look at, if you were to kind of create a map of like what the perception of reality is based on what we hear in the news, it's very different. And then when you actually talk to people in those cities, it's very different. And so how cool to like actually be able to talk to people from all different cultures and backgrounds and see, okay, well, this is what we're hearing. What is it like where you are? And to kind of transcend a lot of those fear messages maybe people are getting around, you know, like racism or, you know, ethnicity or politics or health or whatever it is. But how cool to be able to get through that and to get like, there's real people out there that have human needs and I can actually relate to them versus what we hear in the news, you know, which I'm sure people abroad, you know, are hearing one thing and then what's actually happening is very different in some ways. And, you know, so that I guess I'm curious, like with like what's happening with people being forced to close down their small businesses, you know, maybe being teachers having to like teach from home and take care of the kids. Was there a lot of outrage or anger or, you know, like, I mean, I just have seen a lot of people where they haven't been able to support their family or, you know, all of a sudden they don't have income. I don't know if you got to see those kind of demographics that were maybe really affected by the pandemic, but it seems like everyone was affected in some ways. What have been some of the emotions other than loneliness and, you know, loss of connection maybe that you've seen that people have?
What's interesting and that I'm working on, right, is get like to the best of my ability, get as much of a diversity of people into these feasts as possible for that exact conversation. Because a lot of these people are single, they, you know, and that's just, I think for whatever reason, the demographic of people that are hungry for this type of connection, it might be situations that are a little bit unique for them. I do notice that a lot of them may be job seeking or having troubles. The thing is, people think if you're in tech, for example, that it will be very easy to find a job. But the truth is a lot of people are out of job, lots of very smart people. And so it's competitive, right? What I'm noticing is like, yes, not only are people scared, but I think mental health resources, they're not sure where to go. I do hear a common complaint, especially from therapists as well, right? They're completely full. at full capacity, and also people aren't able to find a therapist they like, or they don't know where to go, or they've never had therapy, and they can afford it, right? These are people that can afford it, and they're not able to necessarily find the therapy, or they don't know how, or they're uncomfortable. And I don't know why mental health is still kind of this like stigma. And so I think within Connection Feast, it's kind of like they look at the feast kind of like as a mental health access. But obviously, and I don't claim to be, I'm not a therapist. It's not therapy, so to speak. It's not even group therapy, although it could be associated with that. I see people hungry for kind of mental health support. And even if they have the means, they don't know how to access it, or they're uncomfortable to access it, or they have not made it a priority, or they only think that they don't need it because they think nothing is really like, I still have a job. I'm so lucky for the job. I should leave those resources to people who really need it. But the truth of the matter is, like, everybody needs this, and you shouldn't just use it when you are in a stressful situation. From another standpoint, we do have a lot of entrepreneurs who are struggling in the sense of their businesses being closed down, and feeling kind of like, not only is my business shut down, but I just feel like I'm shut down. That was my life. That was my identity. Who am I? I lost that. And so I see an epidemic of people like with a lack of knowledge of identity now that they have more of this free time, so to speak. That's an interesting side effect, that our culture, Western culture, puts so much identity within our work that actually one of the rules of Connection Feast is you can't talk about work. That's hard. You can't say to someone, what do you do? So I think people are realizing, yes, there is a really bad disparity with the racism and financial disparity. But in addition to that, wait, there's also this like mental health crisis, and as well as kind of like an emotional crisis of like, I've never been taught how to deal with these emotions. I've never been taught with figuring out who I am. And I still don't have those resources. What do I do?
Yeah. I love it. I mean, and what a great vehicle to kind of help people explore those. I mean, I do think that like with any kind of traumatic experience or something pushing us out of our comfort zone, there's a huge amount of opportunity for growth and transformation. And I do think that with this, pandemic that we're going through, everyone's had to go out of their comfort zone in some ways. So there is huge growth potential in that. And it's like, as we age, especially, we get into these ruts of routine and habit of friends, of conversations, of dialogue, of where we go, what we do. It's the same. And this has been a huge kind of deviation from a lot of that. And there's been a lot of growth potential for that. And so, especially people can kind of be aware of that. And that's really cool to hear kind of how you're doing that. I've got a few more minutes here, and I really love this dialogue. I'd love to continue this at a different point and invite you again to have a dialogue. It's been really fun just hearing about this this calling. I was about to say passion project, but then I remembered calling, because you can really just tell and how excited you are about it, how just every cell of you is just so excited about helping transform our connection, our interaction with people, and helping solve some of the big human needs out there, especially of need for connection and need for interaction. And so thank you for the work that you're doing. And how can people find out what you're doing and find more out about Connection Feast? And then I'll kind of leave it up to you to kind of wrap things up and share any final thoughts you have.
Right. Well, thanks for having me, Dave. I appreciate the opportunity to connect. So ConnectionFeast.com has all our events. We're launching a workshop right now about storytelling and connecting with yourself and other people, and how, and that's a 4-week workshop. But we usually will show like the next 3. I just hosted one last night. So you can find us ConnectionFeast.com. Instagram is @ConnectionFeast. We're also on Facebook. But what I would think to really like have this leaving moment for is people to take a step back and think, what does connection mean to me, to myself, and to other people? And am I living that life? What am I missing in regard to deeper connecting with other people? And if you are craving the opportunity to learn kind of more about what that means and have deeper conversation, you should come to a feast. I would love to see you at a feast. I'd love to connect with you and learn more about what those needs are. I think the most important thing I ask is like, go deeper in your conversations. Take that step to really be present with someone and ask them how they are doing, really, and be vulnerable and actually share that. Stop holding back anymore. And so I kind of would give people that challenge, that takeaway to deepen their relationships with other people.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alex. I really look forward to continuing this conversation and having you, inviting you for another interview. I really enjoyed just discussing with you what you're up to, and keep up the good work. And I'm excited to see how things progress, because I think it's really important work and exciting work about creating connection, because it's such a missing link in so many people's lives. So thank you for the good work that you do.
Thank you for having me, and I'll see you soon.
Okay, enjoy Mexico. Bye.
Bye.